welcome to the BoshNRoll channel. If you want to support my daily Eternal Magic offerings while getting amazing perks like the BoshNRoll Discord community, have me play your deck on the channel, or listen sideboard guides before tournaments, check out the Patreon or YouTube membership program. This channel is possible because of these amazing sponsors. Check them out, all their links are in the video description. As always, thanks for being here. Let's go play some Magic.
Welcome back to the BoshNRoll channel. Today I'm playing Legacy, but I'm not doing a league. This is a targeting testing session versus Pokemoki, and we are both preparing for Eternal Weekend. When this video goes live, the US Eternal Weekend will be a few days in the rear view, but we're recording it Saturday, November 16th. This is exactly 1 week. 7 days from right this moment, I will be seeded for round 1, maybe round 2 of Eternal Weekend. And Pokemoki is, of course, somebody who gives me a lot of inspiration in the Legacy world. I've had a lot of success over the last few years just listening to what Pokemoki says, and really good deck builder. And I tune some stuff at the very end. I help with the sideboard map, but in terms of building a strategy from the ground up, Pokemoki is one of the best there is right now. And at this moment, where we both are for Eternal Weekend is I want to play Bug Beans if I can be convinced that the Reanimator matchup is okay. Pokemoki is between Reanimator or Bug Beans himself. They're the two tops of his testing. He just played all the top decks, all the decks that he likes over the last several months has been taking data, and Bug Beans and Reanimator are the two that are performing the best for him. We decided it's the perfect time to go head-to-head. I will be playing the role of Bug Beans, and he will be playing the role of Dimir Reanimator. And to catch you up on what the testing process looks like versus just randomly playing against each other, we've already had one conversation and we haven't played a match yet. Here is our Discord chat leading up to this. He asked me, do I want to test versus Wasteland or the Eco Baronin non-Wasteland version? And he asked if there's anything I want to change about the list. What he's been thinking about is getting a consign to memory into the main deck because it feels a little weakness versus Eldrazi, and feels that Spellbomb is a little too slow to cycle in that matchup. He wanted to cut a Spellbomb for consign, and I had a similar thought. However, I think the third Daze is worse than the second Spellbomb, and some agreement on that idea. And then he and I had been messaging earlier this week that maybe 3 Beanstalks is right because the format is so fast and you board out a Beanstalk in the fast matchups. I haven't played with that yet, but he has, and he tried a second Witherbloom Command main, trying to collapse the synergy decks in game 1 and then focus on raw card advantage for game 2. We ended up for this testing league, -1 Daze, -1 Bean, +1 Witherbloom Command, +1 Consign in the main, and then +1 Bean open slot because I don't want to put Daze in the sideboard. Then we had a conversation where he still likes 3 Daze versus Reanimator and Tempo, but I say I like Daze as a generally fine answer to whatever when I don't know what I need to beat yet, but I want my sideboard slots to be surgical hammers, basically. I want them to really beat the deck. I'm frequently boarding out Daze. I don't want another one. And I suggested Dark Betrayal, because the 2 matches that he said he wants the third Daze still against are both Dimir Frog decks. And rather than try to get Daze to line up, I just want a 1 mana efficient removal spell to kill the thing that comes out. And we mostly agreed on that. Then he asked if I want to play against Wastelands or non-Wastelands again, because I forgot he asked that question. And I suggested, because we're testing, just switch between both. And I'm going to request that he doesn't tell me which one he's on at any given time. And then I will be playing against mostly stock, but alternating in between Wasteland and non-Wasteland builds of Reanimator throughout this set. As you can see, those changes are reflected here. 3 Beanstalks, 2 Witherbloom Command, 1 Consign, 2 Daze. And this 1 Consign gets us back to that last year build where there was 1 Stifle in the main. Ooh, that felt good. Happy to be back on this, and let's see if it works out. We have a few hours blocked off for this. We'll see how many matches we get done. It might be 2, it might be 6, I don't know. But whatever it is, it's high-level testing of two important decks. Let's get after it. This is Bug Beans versus Reanimator. 3-for-1 Trading is having a Black Friday sale that starts Wednesday, November 27th. Their online store has a fantastic selection of high-end Magic cards, especially for vintage, legacy, and old-school players. Remember to sign up now so you don't miss the Black Friday deals. Use the QR code or go to shop.3for1trading.com. I'm on the play in the first round, and I asked an important clarifying question of, do you want to play like we know the matchup or play like it's blind? At Eternal Weekend, it would be blind, and I would keep this hand as just turn 1 Tameo, Protector with some Wastelands, try to buy time until I find black is perfectly fine, but knowing it's Reanimator, this hand actually is pretty dicey. He wants to play like we know? Okay, I will mulligan this hand then. All right, well, cooking. I'm going to keep this and bottom one of the Ponders. And I don't know if he's got Wastelands in his deck or not right now, but I believe this is still the right way to start. I bottomed a Ponder because if the graveyard is under control with Nile Spellbomb, now I have to worry about creatures, and Strix and Edict both do that. They both handle that problem. So what am I looking for if I keep a Ponder? I would be looking for lands to cast Strix or Sheoldred's Edict. So bottoming a land doesn't make sense. Ponder's job is to find cards you need, and if your hand already has the cards you need, then you don't need Ponder. I shuffled that Ponder. Immediately returns to me. I'm going to play Strix here. It's coming together. Right now I'm hoping he's not the Wasteland build, but if he is, he could take me off blue, which takes me off 3 of the cards in my hand. It actually takes me off 4 of them, but it takes me off all 3 of the cards that I could and would cast right now. I am not interested in being hyper aggressive about Ponder. Like, he pondered, shuffled another Ponder without making a land drop. I could daze this and try to put him in the garbage, but I'm not a deck that leverages that. Like, haha, you missed a land drop. Take 1 from Baleful Strix. Got him. What are we even talking about there? In with Strix. The second Spellbomb is nice. I can build out my mana here. I don't need or want Lorien revealed for a while. Polluted Delta could get either basic land if it needs to. And the backup Spellbomb. Turning that graveyard all the way off. Because you can overwhelm 1 Spellbomb. If you like Cycle Troll, flip Metamorphosis Fanatic, force me to bomb, you still have a Fanatic, and then Entomb Reanimate on the next turn. That's a line to overwhelm Spellbomb in game 1, and he is working with 7 cards in hand over there. A Forg. Ponder. I'm going to fetch my Hedge Maze this turn. I have 2 black, which means 1 Wasteland won't take me off it. Hedge Maze. Thoughtseize, let's go. Put that right on top. Show me your secrets. All 6 of them. Reanimate, Daze, Brainstorm, Fatal Push. Okay. If I take Brainstorm, cast Sheoldred's Edict, he dazes, I daze the Daze, his hand becomes Fatal Push, Reanimate. The Reanimate is enough to flush out one of the spell bombs, but I could pick up Underground Sea and have the black to draw a card off it. All right, I'm taking Brainstorm. Each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature of their choice. Okay, didn't want to fight over that. That's smart. Recognized the play pattern. Ooh, okay. Had a big setup here. Fanatic's going to resolve. And you do want to wait until Fanatic is targeting something to Spellbomb. And right now I know the hand, so it's not a big deal. But if you Spellbomb in response to Fanatic on the stack, then they could Entomb in response and then resolve it, and then you're really in trouble. Okay, that's gone. Now I have to beat a 4/4. Reanimating my Strix. Do I think Daze is going to get better than this? And he's also got a Daze. I actually am going to Daze because this is worth a lot of cards right now. Okay. Did decide to Daze me back. I'm not going to Spellbomb myself over this. And that was super heads up. Great play by my opponent. I think 80% plus of my Eternal Awakened opponents would have dazed by Sheoldred's Edict. Ponder. Okay, Brainstorm. I do want. Unfortunately, we're in a situation where I have to shuffle first, because I really don't want to see those cards again. Brainstorm. Psychic Frog, Mystic Sanctuary. These cards are not very good right away. Yeah, right now I feel like we're just going to lose to the 4/4 lifelink. I can at least play around Thoughtseize here by putting back the cards I care about. Okay, I'm going to take 5 and then take another 5. but I'll have Psychic Frog in play. Losing to my own Baleful Strix. A Brainstorm, then Undercity Sewers. Good sequencing. This can clear a card from the Brainstorm. Dump to Archon. Am I desperate enough yet? I think I'm just going to draw a card from Spellbomb here. I don't like doing this, but I am struggling and need to find some action. Brainstorm. Start there. Fatal Push does take out the Strix. If I put back Wasteland and Sanctuary, I can get Frog here. And I'm mostly betting right now that my opponent has not banked an Entomb Reanimate in hand, because if my hand was good, I would have been patient about the Spell Bomb, and then Reanimate would just be bad for a long time. Land number 4 in play is a little spooky because that represents Hardcast Force. But I can Fatal Push twice this turn if I have to. Okay, I'll just push now. That worked. Attack with my Frog. We're in. Okay, got through the Brainstorm. Is there a card in my graveyard? Sheoldred's Edict. There is. Okay. I could put Sheoldred's Edict on top, which starts to stabilize. Sanctuary targeting Edict. And I'm just going to go to my opponent's turn here. I don't like giving them an extra draw, but even less do I like the possibility of them flipping a Fanatic and just going a second round on it. They put back Wasteland and Bowmaster. And Wasteland is approaching useful because casting Fanatic is a thing this deck does eventually, especially the non-Wasteland builds. Okay, I'm going to put back Delta Bowmaster. Each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature of their choice. Okay, did saving the Wasteland save me? Maybe. Okay, I'm going to play Wasteland and attack. I'm going to Wasteland my opponent in the end of combat. Take out that Sewer. That turns off Force of Will for my main phase. I'm not going to cast the Bowmaster right away, but that is 6 mana turned off. But I have used both my spell bombs already. I feel like we're in a place where he would have brainstormed for value by now. And just, I'm not going to try to snipe it. I'm going to push damage. Yeah, drawing Wild for the first time. Murktide's good. And Frog's doing its thing. Haven't found a Beanstalk yet, which is what I really want to be doing. I'm making kind of a mid-sized Murktide, because Frog can make it bigger, basically at will. And exiling Baleful Strix from my graveyard makes Reanimate a little worse. Okay, a Wasteland revealed after all this time. But also a 6 mana Metamorphosis Fanatic. Oh no, good. What a relief. What a game we're playing where Troll of Khazad-dûm is a relief to play against. Okay, scooped it up. Because I can make the Frog fly, which gives the Murktide +6. And 3, that's 6, 10, 15. I have exactly lethal here. I was going to do the math when we got to my turn, but he did it for me. All right, I mean, that was really interesting back and forth. And the 4/4 flipped a game where I had double Spell Bomb, but then just one removal spell flipped it back my way. That was cool. And now we get this kind of interesting thing where we've seen Wasteland, so I do like Island. If my opponent jukes, I want up the Beanstalk. If he doesn't juke or he's on a partial juke, I think 3 is the right number. Because up the Beanstalk is a raw cards kind of card. If the game's going to take a long time and whoever just has the most cards around turn 5 or 6 is going to win, this is the perfect thing. However, if the game is going to happen, if the critical turn is turn 2, like if Entomb Reanimate is what we're actually doing, a 2 mana thing that doesn't affect the board is not good. But I think that with Spell Bombs, Dazes, Grafdigger's Cage, Force of Will just has to come out. I'm going to side grade a Wasteland into an Island. Consign to Memory is not for this matchup. Witherbloom Command's not really for this matchup either, but if they pivot onto Bowmasters, it's fine. I think I'm going down 1 Witherbloom. And now I have a pretty reasonable map, except for this 4th Beanstalk. And remember, we just changed this, so I haven't actually thought about mapping this out yet. Yeah, I'm not going to cut a removal spell. I'm not going to cut a Graveyard Hate card. Oh god, I have 5 seconds left. How did that happen? Submit my deck. Wow, I think I got it in. I had a little bit of a coughing fit that I muted my mic and turned away from and came back, and I really hope this is the correctly sideboarded deck. All right, good. What I was thinking about while I was having my off-camera coughing fit is that I'm cutting 4 of the cards that make up the Beanstalk Busted in Force of Will, and it does make sense as a package. All right, and I'm just going to keep reasonable interaction and lands and spells in these game 2 situations and hope I don't get dunked on. Okay, I'm going to play Tameo off of an Underground Sea. Well, it might be over. Drax is in the graveyard, and my opponent knows that if I could interact here, I would have fought over the Entomb. And because he built the deck, he also knows that I don't play any Fairy Macabres or Surgical Extractions. Yeah, okay. Well, here we go. Juke, rejuke. Fooled me. Yeah, there's a Force of Will in this pile and a Thoughtseize. We don't need to keep doing this. Okay, serious question now is, how much do I respect that? Because I do have Spellbomb, Grafdigger's Cage, Thoughtseize, Daze. That's 6 ways to stop exactly that from happening. And if I do something like cut another Beanstalk to get one of my Force of Wills back in, does that actually solve my problem? Getting dunked on sucks, but also that's not going to happen every game, and I don't want to freak out and overreact to a situation I don't have to. In Witherbloom Command, and it destroys Animate Dead, but that's not a good thing to do. Maybe I will bring 1 Force of Will back in over Witherbloom Command just because I don't think this card is high impact. All right, I'll try that. Okay, I'm going to keep my hand. Ponder doing a lot of work here. Delta, Bowmaster, Beanstalk. Are these the cards I want? These are not the Grafdigger's Cages I was looking for. If my opponent doesn't have Entomb in their opening hand, this setup is phenomenal. I think I'm going to shuffle. I got a Lorien revealed, so my hand's basically blank right now. Maybe I'm not thinking about this from my opponent's point of view well enough, and their fair deck, their sideboard juke, is not better than Bug Beans at being a fair mid-range deck, and maybe they just have to stay a Reanimator deck, like it or not. All right, I'll cast Psychic Frog here, which comes with its own risks, because if they do something like Fatal Push Reanimate, now they have a Psychic Frog. But my alternative was just play Wasteland and hope they don't have any mana on their turn. Cycle to Troll. Got Underground Sea. Yeah, like this start that actually happened this game, I would have preferred to have up the Beanstalk in play to Psychic Frog at this moment. Oh no. Yikes. Okay, so must have drawn one of those, but it still happened. I'm not going to concede right away, but it's bad. Yeah, I think maybe assuming they're going to juke is too far. And yeah, I think that's the piece of the puzzle I was missing until just this moment. They can't actually beat Bug Beans as Dimir midrange. So they have to stay Reanimator, which I don't know if that affects how many forces I leave in, but it does affect how I mulligan. Good to know. Important lesson before Eternal Weekend. Opponent kept Fatal Push Reanimate, Psychic Frog, Misty Rainforest. Did not choose Animate Dead. Already has 9 cards in hand. I have to assume he has a counterspell, or else shoving into Daze like that is pretty wild. Or it could just be multiple Reanimates and the Entomb was going to resolve and then let me fight over Reanimate. Discarded Wasteland and Metamorphosis Fanatic. And I've basically lost at this point. But I will continue playing through because it's game 3. Thoughtseize. Ha! Did you think that would find a useful card? Played around it. Atraxa getting in. And we know he can reanimate Metamorphosis Fanatic and get back Troll here. Decided to just play Frog instead. Keeping a second wave in the bank. Hedge Maze. Arctide Regent does not help me here. Up the Beanstalk, maybe. I'm looking for Murderous Cut. That's how I still play this game. Or Dark Betrayal. Does something do at least temporarily remove the Atraxa? Alright, now you win. Okay, that was a beating based on a sideboard strategy that makes perfect sense once I think about it a little bit. I am live on the call with Pokemoki now, and we're just going to debrief the game before we go into the next one. What did you
Yeah.
notice from your side?
So I noticed a few things. One is in game one, I think we saw one of the issues that the blue black deck has, where it's just like if you aren't doing something explosive out the gate or your opponent interacts, sometimes you can kind of just stall out and not do much of anything. So my hand at the end was like 6 lands, Daze, Atraxa, Archon. Like when I cast that Brainstorm, and I'm just like, I can't even surveil a bad card away. My hand is still just not doing anything here. So that's one of the weaknesses. And
Right.
then
I mean, also a
um,
strength though that game one, because I had double Nile Spellbomb, and you still managed to reanimate or flip a Metamorphosis Fanatic and then reanimate my Baleful Strix and be up a bunch of cards, and it put me in a position where I had to find that Children's Edict to even be alive. And then,
mhm.
like, if you had really anything to follow that up over the next 3 turns, I was basically dead. So that
There
we
was
saw
some
the
truth.
strength of the grind, even against main deck hate.
Yeah, I do think Fnatic has definitely been an important tool for that end. Obviously, there's some inconsistencies. I did draw a lot of brainstorms that game. Um, I will say, I feel like in that game one, your draw was somewhat anemic too, right? Like there was no Beanstalks or Murktides, where it's like, I think even if you found Murktide rather than Children's Edict, you also just would have been in that game. So you were drawing to a lot of outs there.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I think I
yeah,
was favored in that position, but if your 6 lands in hand were force blue card, I couldn't win. And
sure.
the strength of the keep was the Nile Spellbomb, basically. Like my
Uh-huh.
keep was Nile Spellbomb, Psychic Frogs, or not Psychic Frog, Baleful Strix, Nile Spellbomb, Baleful Strix, Children's Edict, and like 2 lands. Where
Hmm.
turn off the graveyard, answer the next 2 creatures was the plan, and
Yeah.
it worked for a while, and then it didn't work, and then I needed you to flood out to actually pull out.
Sure, that's fair. And then I do think I ran pretty hot in the post board games just because I'm doing the very common thing of cutting 2 Entombs post sideboard and one of the big creatures.
Oh, okay.
And I just happened to have the Entomb in my opener both times. And then I just wanted to touch on game three real quick because on my end 2 things came up. One was the mana base where I talked in my debrief about like Wasteland versus not, and I did have a Wasteland in that game three, and it affected how I played the turn because it's like what I wanted to do was Thoughtseize turn one and then Entomb Reanimate turn two, but I had to Swamp Cycle with Troll. So it's like if you just had interaction there, I wouldn't have known about it and would have had to play into it. And I think that is those things are a big difference between winning and losing, right? Like so much of the game bottlenecks to this point where you are reanimating your Atraxa.
Right.
Um, the other big thing was that uh, I think I don't know if most pilots would have taken that risk. Part of why I chose to take it was because I know that the Bug Beanstalk deck, at least lists right now, are playing the mana graveyard hate, like the permanent based hate. And so when that's not in play, I don't have to worry about like surgical or macabre. And so just from a deck building perspective, that might be something we want to think about before Eternal Weekend, where obviously I don't think every Blue Black Reanimator pilot will be tuned in to, what Bug Beanstalk is doing, but it is still very powerful. Like Macabre is still very powerful because it's not sitting in play to know about and you can't daze or force to will it. So like that might be a card we want access to just from a deck building perspective.
Right. I had the same observation when that was happening, where when you cast the Entomb and I didn't have a cage or a spell bomb in play, and Entomb resolves, you just know that it reanimates fine from that point on. And you having designed this sideboard is a huge advantage over the average rando. And we
Yeah.
could either actually play one of those cards, or we could let the average rando play around Fairy Macabre and hope they
Mm-hmm.
slow down and just give me like one more turn to dig for the actual cage. There's 2 ways to approach that reasonably. And I also had the observation where when you just Entomb Reanimated me twice in the sideboard games, I thought what you were doing was acknowledging that the Dimir tempo sideboard juke is not a better mid-range tempo deck than Bug Beans is, and you just decided to stay a Reanimator deck. But hearing that you actually did go to the half juke and just had it and sent it twice, I don't feel so bad about my plan anymore. Like, if you have it, you have it. That's part of playing against combo. But am I supposed to mull to 5 to find a Grafdigger's Cage against someone who has somewhere between 0 and 2 Entombs in their deck? I don't know.
Probably not. No, I agree. That might not also be another like point in favor of playing a fourth piece of hate, though, where it's like you just have it more often, so you don't have to mulligan for it as much, and you have that bar of safety. On my end, I've been testing. I mentioned in my intro, I've been testing a lot with this deck and Beans, and one of the reasons that I might not want to play Reanimator is the Nadu matchup has felt worse and worse as those pilots have tuned the deck, and it still feels really good from the Bug Beanstalk side.
Okay.
And part of the issue with Reanimator versus Nadu is that they have so much graveyard hate that you have to rely on your mid-range plan, and it is not better.
No, it's not.
Which I think that if Beans can get to that point, that is like a very good combination.
Okay, so initial impression, we have this fourth Beanstalk in the sideboard right now. We have the second Island in the sideboard right now. The Dark Betrayal / Days brand new slot that just opened up. Where do you see Fairy Macabre going, if that's a card we're gonna adopt?
I personally, I'm closest, just baseline, I'm closest to wanting to get rid of that Days / Betrayal for it. Just because I feel like looking at my sideboard plan, I was cutting Days versus a lot of decks. I was keeping it in basically versus tempo and like spell-based combo, like Doomsday or, Storm. And so that's kind of narrow. And as you said, it's like a general thing, but not a specific thing.
Right. And this slot is for this matchup. Like,
exactly.
Whether it's Days, Dark Betrayal, or Fairy Macabre, it's all for this matchup. And do we want more answers to Psychic Frog, or is the deck already good at that? Or do we just want to make sure we don't get cheesed and make them play our game? And that's what Fairy Macabre would do.
Yeah, I think that the deck is pretty suited to fight Macabre. You just have a glut of removal, and your big creatures line up well. Like Murktide is certainly fallen out of favor recently, but it does line up very well versus Psychic Frog.
Yeah, it's really big.
Yeah, and it flies. So I think that making it so you don't lose the cheese is probably better. And I do think Cage still has a home just because it is quite good versus Nadu and like Cradle Control, as an example. And it's a card you can bring in versus Mystic Forge to stop the Mystic Forge or
right.
So I like that as a slot, and I think that it needs to stay for those matchups.
Okay. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I've changed Dark Betrayal to Fairy Macabre until we decide otherwise.
I dig it. All right, do you want to hop into another one?
Yeah, let's do another one.
All right, sounds great.
This video is sponsored by Moxfield.com, the easiest way to build Magic decks online. Moxfield supports over 30 formats, including Legacy and everything else you'll see on this channel. There's multiple customizations so you can interact with your deck how you want. Views such as text, grid, or stacks. And groupings like type, subtype, color, color identity, even artist. The site offers light mode, dark mode, and so much more. However you want to see your deck, Moxfield can provide it for you. Follow my Moxfield to keep up with the channel and what I'm playing in paper. I'll see you there.
I'm on the draw in the second set. We haven't discussed alternating play draw. I just happened to lose the die roll on Magic Online, but you should alternate play draw if you're doing a set like this, and we'll discuss that if it comes up. My hand is great versus any matchup, and having the spell bomb specifically in this matchup is great too. Finding Fatal Push insulates me versus a Frog pivot. I cycle Troll in response, and we're in. Okay. Troll got Underground Sea. Rainstorm. And this is a spot where Troll of Khazad-dûm is insane. In a recent episode of the Eternal Glory podcast, we talked about whether or not banning Psychic Frog is enough to get Dimir Reanimator back in line. And I called out Troll of Khazad-dûm as a card that is one of the things breaking the Reanimator shell right now. The fact that your Polluted Delta is just a reanimate target. Like, that was not even a 2-for-1 exchange. Normally, if you get to reanimate something that went to the graveyard, they had to do something to put it there. But that's not even what's happening right now, because the troll replaced itself with a land, just passively how you want to play the game anyway. And it happened so quickly that my reanimate couldn't even, or my Nile Spellbomb couldn't even draw a card. It's honestly pretty messed up, the way that Troll of Khazad-dûm affects the play patterns of a reanimate deck. I don't know if the answer to that is ban Troll of Khazad-dûm. That might be a little aggro, but it is certainly very powerful in the shell and doing very stupid things to the Legacy format. I'm personally pretty high on banning the card Reanimate itself. I think Entomb is interesting, and multiple decks can play that, like Loam Pox decks and stuff like that. Using that card is really interesting. I think I'm taking Brainstorm here because I can cut the Troll and cancel out the Animate Dead. I just don't want my opponent finding ways through here. I also have this random main deck Consign in my hand, which works against Animate Dead. I do get hard punished if my opponent draws one of the other Entombs, though. But I am going to replicate this just in case he drew Force of Will. Though maybe I would want my opponent on the hook for a Force of Will. Like, if they spend 2 cards here on this, that's fine. Because I could just untap and cut it and draw a card, and I'm up like 3 cards on that exchange. Okay. Main deck Consign, doing work. Animate Dead just sitting in play. Weird as hell. But that is what happens. This Troll's going to get under City Sewers, and that it did. Kept a card on top. A little bit scary. Murktide Regent? I'll have the Beanstalk. Let's go. Now we're doing it. This didn't happen at all in the first game, or the first set of our match, and now I'm just cooking with gas. And if there's a Fanatic on top, I would have been in trouble, but there wasn't. Opponent's got a Ponder. Did not shuffle. I can get my Hedge Maze here, or I can get my Mystic Sanctuary here. I think I'd rather get my Hedge Maze. I don't have a blue card to go with Force of Will, and I don't really want a Thoughtseize here. I'm not going to Wasteland either. There's enough lands over there, I'm not worried about that. I ended up with Force anyway. Are we going to see a game plan where he just deploys Brazen Borrower for the beats? I'd be really surprised, because that's the best answer in the deck to Murktide Regent, which is also one of my best draws right now. The second Sewers. Oh, dumped an Archon. Chill. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. If this Ponder finds a Reanimate effect, which there are, what, 6 still in the deck? 5 still in the deck. Did not shuffle. Psychic Frog. Okay. That's a relief. I'm going to use Fatal Push while I can. A land is actually a good draw here. That turns on my Force of Will. Any blue card plays. All right. Now the shields are up. That was a stressful turn, but we dodged. And we're still working with perfect information about the hand. Do I want to get a Thoughtseize here? I don't think so. I'm just going to leave my fetch lands available. And I drew another one. Now I can grab Thoughtseize next turn and still hold up Force of Will. Polluted Delta gets my basics, so I'm going to use Misty Rainforest here. I have most situations covered. I want to use Thoughtseize just to punch a hole in the uncovered zones. Hardcast Force. Alright, that's fine. It got Force out of the hand. That works for me. I could have forced back and drawn 2 cards, but I'd rather have Force for my opponent's next real card. Alright, well, here we are. Bayou, Force of Will. And Beanstalk's getting to work. 1 unknown card in hand. Even if it is Reanimate here, I can absorb 1 Archon trigger. I'm way less scared of Archon than I am of Atraxa in this matchup, which is another important thing to point out. How many lands do I actually need? I don't think I want to play the Swamp. It'll push your Frog. And Witherbloom Command's not actually doing anything here. I could destroy that Animate Dead. I don't know if it's more helpful or completely useless either way in the graveyard. I guess you could feed it to Frog in the graveyard. Oh, we did it. Well, that's the one we were waiting for. And I'm going maximum size on this thing. Another command. Tameo. Murktide's in. Tameo joined the party. I will play out the swamp because these Witherbloom commands are kind of whatever. I have stuff I could discard to an Archon. Fatal Push and Brazen Borrower. Brazen Borrower is kind of funny because it does answer my Murktide, but I drew 2 cards off that and I'm about to do it again. And there goes all the known information. Maybe I should have made a medium-sized Murktide, knowing that the Brazen Borrower was in hand. But I don't want him to have the opportunity to ignore it, or sculpt around it, or put something into play that's bigger than it. Shuffle to Ponder. Main phase Brazen Bee. Daze your own Brazen Borrower. I'm just trying to get some selection off of an Undercity Sewer. It's desperate, but it works. And now I have a good target for Witherbloom. Okay, sweet. This is going to be a pretty good turn. Ponder, do I want to start with that? I think so. Nile Spellbomb, that checks a lot of boxes that I want checked. And then green, black. Tameo on top of my deck. Do I actually want that? I think I do. I'm going to make... I could drain my opponent for 2, or I could mill him. And now that I have Nile Spellbomb in hand, that might be okay. Alright, I'm going to mill you. -3, -1. The Borrower. Yeah, that just cleared Metamorphosis Fanatic. I don't know if he set that up or if that was at random, but I'll take it either way. Wasteland to my hand. Nile Spellbomb in play. Wasteland, Murktide. Make it as big as I can get it. Here's the Tameo. I think I'm going to Wasteland here. And I'm going to leave up Cut or Spellbomb trigger rather than play out the Tameo. And this is what he was talking about in the debrief after round 1. Just finding a Murktide Regent versus not doing that in a game is so insane. Cool. Yeah, there was like 1 or 2 turns where if he finds Reanimate, I have to come back. But because he didn't have it, that was pretty comfortable throughout. Okay, that one felt good. +1 Fairy Macabre. You love to see it. And I'm going to do the same 7-card map here. 1 Force of Will, 2 commands out, and I side graded a Wasteland. He's not a Wasteland build. It doesn't appear at this time. Like the second Undercity Sewers is a good indication that Wasteland's not part of the game. But it's not really a matchup where I'm trying to waste him either. Mana Denial is not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to stuff all of the cards he plays back into his face until they're ineffective. Okay, submit the deck. Love this hand on the draw. Gonna keep. I'm ready for Psychic Frog and I'm ready for Entomb Reanimate. Both plans covered. I'm not ready for Thoughtseize Entomb Reanimate. But even the days even slows down that. Bonus on 5. Finally, Reanimator didn't keep 7. A Spellbomb Barino. We're in. This just feels so good to just park this thing in play and know that you've cut off the most horrifying things their deck's capable of. This is interesting, because I could just daze this, but I could Fatal Push it on my turn, and daze if he fights back. Like, there's not actually a test being tested there. I have 3 answers to Psychic Frog in my hand. Push, push, and daze to protect one of the pushes. Brainstorm, go for it. Getting Thoughtseized. I think that's mostly fine. And I'd prefer to have my cards than not have my cards. But what am I going to do? I'm not going to daze it. Clear the push, making room for the next round of creatures. I'm going to get my Hedge Maze here. Hedge my next draw step. Da-dum-ch. Brainstorm, obviously insane at all times against every opponent. Brainstorm. Especially ones who have just Thoughtseized you. Okay, opponent has seen Daze. Does that make it less valuable? Probably. But I also don't need Lorien revealed in this environment. I'm going to put back Lorien. And I could just shove Murktide right now, but that's shoving into Daze. I'm going to ponder with my green land. Dismember Murktide, Beanstalk. Okay, let's go. Opponent just took a removal spell from me, so replacing it with another one seems like it makes some sense. And then the Beanstalk lets me set up the next 2 Murktide regions that I'm drawing after that. This is a shuffle away from the Brainstorm. This is a random Surveil. Decided to keep it. Fanatic. Okay. Yeah, that's really good. It is smaller than Murktide Regent, though, as we have pointed out. Yeah, wait for this trigger to go on the stack and then bomb them. It's also smaller than Dismember. Beanstalk's in the grip. You've got a 4/4. I'm going to play Beanstalk. I can afford to take 4, even if I decide not to Dismember this turn. I don't think I want to let Daze be on here. I'm going to play Spellbomb, which I don't mind that much if it gets dazed. I'll take 4 to 14, and then I can Dismember down to 10 and play Murktide in the same turn. Now I'm just biding my time until it's correct to flip it back on him. I don't think Fnatic has brought a card back in this set yet. I think it has just been a 4/4 for 2 every time, but it has been relevant as a 4/4 for 2 every time. Oh, the Macabre. All right. Well, I could just play a large Murktide here, draw 2 cards. I could just make Murktide 5/5. 3, 4, 5. I'm going to make it big enough to beat Fnatic and draw a card, but not overcommit it into a situation where it's going to die to Brazen Borrower and take my whole graveyard with it. Okay, this land is huge. This lets me Dismember around Daze now, which I'm going to do in my opponent's, I guess, main phase. Yeah, just playing around the... Oh, I didn't need to play around the RNG Fnatic because I have Spellbomb in play. And if I get forced here, I deserve it. Alright, cool, that's gone. Mystic Sanctuary is on if I ever need that. I'm holding Macabre and their Spellbomb part in play. I'm significantly bigger than Psychic Frog. I have some insider information that Pokemoki's not big on Barogoyf. Wow, Macabre, a sicko. Exile Fairy Macabre, or Exile Murktide Regent and Metamorphosis Fnatic, because this thing can split, where I don't have to bomb myself and lose my graveyard as a resource. That was actually really insane. Cycling a Troll. Going Hellbent here to get 1 more Surveil, and then Murktide's going to run away with this one, I think. Kept the card on top. Bayou doesn't cast any of my spells. I could just spend 3 on Murktide. I could Brainstorm first. Yeah, Brainstorm first is the thing that makes the most sense here. I get rid of Bayou, and I think we're past Daze as a magic card. Bayou and Daze are gone. Fetch. I could put a card on top of my deck here. I could buy back my Brainstorm. I don't think I want any of these cards specifically, though. Bayou doesn't cast Ponder. It does cast Grafdigger's Cage. It does tap Denial Spellbomb. I think I just want basic Island, though. Keep my options up. And I decided to make Murktide maximum size because opponent is in top deck mode, and I exiled my Fairy Macabre just as 1 less thing to reanimate. There is still a Bayou in my deck, in case I need to Spellbomb and draw a card, which I'm likely to do just for value at this point. That Grafdigger's Cage is down. What else do I need this bomb for now? Did not shuffle Ponder, so this has to be an answer to Murktide. That's the only thing that makes sense. Yep, there it goes. And I'm just going to value bomb here off the Bayou. Another Bean. These games feel very stupid when they come together, and this is a much better showcase than the last one. And I'm going to take Ponder. I'm going to shuffle. I don't need Carpet of Flowers anymore. Do I want to put another Ponder on top of the deck? Sure. As long as I have Velocity, things are good. Beanstalk draws the other Ponder. Ponder leaving up 1 of each. Alright, we've got a shuffle. I need a Frog, a Bowmaster, a Murktide at this point. Another Ponder. Yikes. Somehow, these cards continue not being good. However, I will bank this Force Blue card with my double Beanstalk and just hope that whatever my opponent draws this turn doesn't beat Murderous Cut. Okay, spending 2 on a Fnatic. I'll cut that. Nothing to reanimate. Couldn't reanimate it if it was there. And step cut. Leaving spells in my graveyard. There is some small concern about decking myself, but I mean, it is a small concern. I have 27 cards, opponent has 19 life. Yeah, casting this Lorien Revealed puts me to 21 cards a deck. Yeah, that's fine. That's enough. I can discard those 21 cards to Psychic Frog. Bing, 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 bing. I do have to discard a card. It's probably going to be a Wasteland. All right, cool. And we did it. As long as they don't reanimate, this side of the deck is really good. Let's go debrief for this. Okay, yeah, that one went a lot better for my side.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. On my end, two quick thoughts. I think game one kind of went the same way game one did in our last match, where you were able to interact with what I was doing, and then just kind of the inherent issue with the deck that its late game is pretty poor and can just draw a lot of not useful things came into play. And then game two obviously was a mulligan to 5, but for what it's worth, I don't really think it had too much of an effect. Just the first two were no landers, but the cards I bottomed were like a Force of Will and an extra land, and like the difference was basically I didn't need the land, so the difference was like a Brainstorm, that I pitched to Force of Will. I don't think that's changing the outcome there, so that was really convincing. And then
Right, and mulligans are part of the game, and
exactly,
Reanimator is a combo deck that needs ABs to come together for synergy, and I'm just a deck with card quality, so Reanimator is going to mulligan more than Bug Beans over a larger set of games.
Completely agree. And then I was happy that the the Macabre worked out well. Yeah, doing exactly what we need it for, and we can kind of see how the mid range. You were never in real threat of losing the mid range game, so just having stuff for the graveyard feels powerful.
Right. Yeah. Like game one, there was I think one turn where my shields were down and you were pondering with an Archon in the graveyard. But even if that Archon came in, I was holding Murderous Cut and I had a card I wouldn't miss to discard. Like it would have been a pretty fancy Lightning Helix for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the removal's not white in this deck. So like cutting an Archon, going down 2 cards and then cut it, you go down another card, you're down 3 life, and then it gets reanimated again is a steady problem that like Swords of Plowshares decks don't have. But once that Ponder missed on that clutch turn, I just wasn't worried about anything anymore. And then game 2, I don't think I was ever worried about anything you did in game 2 at any point.
That seems correct. Yeah, that sounds good. It's always good when the plan kind of works how you write it up. I don't have too much more to unpack there. Do you want to hop into one more game, or do you have anything else?
No, that I was just really happy that the Macabre came up so heavy. Like you were being clever around my Nile Spellbomb by reanimating out of my graveyard, and I just countered it and took your graveyard anyway with the Macabre. That was just kind of the perfect toy.
Yeah, I do think that is like a reasonable part of, like, it does subtly help the issue of not having Swords of Plowshares, right? Where it's like it gets rid of 2 creatures out of a graveyard, which means it's fizzling a reanimation spell, and you have less things to reanimate later. So it's good there too.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Right, sounds great.
Cool. Let's play another one.
Sounds good.
We're a few rounds into the video. Thanks for sticking with me. If you're having fun, hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to sign up for shop.3frontrading.com's Black Friday sale, November 27th through December 2nd. I'm on the play for the 3rd round, and I'm not going to keep a basic swamp as my only thing to do. This one's a little awkward, but I'm not going to refuse it. Keep, and I'll bottom Witherbloom Command just because it's low impact in the matchup. I'll keep Ponder around. Card selection begin. Again, I don't know if this is a Wasteland build or not, but I'm not that worried about it if it is. I'm going to Ponder first before I play my land. If he wants to like get crazy and daze this, smelling weakness, I don't care that much. Just give him an opportunity to get aggressive when it's not actually right to do that. And in this spot, if he takes this opportunity to entomb in response to Ponder, then I can Ponder into Spellbomb. Okay. Did have the daze. Cycle Troll. And play my land anyway. Pass the turn. That's a daze I don't have to worry about now. And it said I'm back a land when I'm holding Wasteland as well. And I just want this game to go longer. That's my job. Fatal Push. I'm going to play Wasteland and pass. See if he does anything in the end step. He did not. I'm going to waste him now. Yeah, that just died. Does not have Entomb or is not willing to cast it here. One of those 2 things is true. Okay, moment of truth. Can I actually move the game forward? Another one. Bang. Who's the Wasteland deck now? Loaded blue off that. And then didn't do anything with the blue. Okay, I'm still not doing anything, but I've successfully made the game drag into turn 4, where there's not an Archon in play yet. Had polluted Delta anyway. This is a spot where this could sign, if it was actually Stifle, would be a lot more interesting. I'm not saying it's correct to play Stifle over Consign for overall metagame considerations, but in this moment, it's true. Brainstorming in response to my Lorien revealed, and had to get basic Island out of this, out of fear of the next Wasteland. That's a big deal, because all the good cards in his deck are black, and didn't upkeep Shuffle with Troll. Had the basic Swamp anyway. There's no creatures in the graveyard. I can Stifle and Animate Dead. Now we're in. Let's go. This is what I was waiting for. Probably has to force this if he's got it. Entomb in response. Okay. A little worried now. If he's got Entomb and Force of Will, might be able to make a run at this here. He's in the tank deciding how he wants to interact with this. He does have the Force. I'm going to let that fight win. Not that I had much of a choice. Consign to Memory here counters Animate Dead's trigger. If it's Reanimate, it counters Atraxa's trigger. And my opponent's at 10. I do get got by Daze here. I'd fetch. Underground Sea. Consign this. Hope there's not another piece of interaction over there. Oh no, mana's being tapped. Shit. Yeah, I needed that to not happen. Found a Thoughtseize and Black Source, which is going to take my Murderous Cut. Unless he values the Reanimate over Thoughtseize, which, I don't know, that's actually an interesting choice to make. Fanatic Reanimate Misty is what he took, okay. Cycle Troll, immediately reanimated that. Opponent's at 4 life. Is there a third counterspell over there? I think I want to ponder first, see if I find a Daze or something that helps here. Spellbomb's not bad. It's not good either, though. A Murderous Cut the Atraxa. Play the Spellbomb. Okay, that's all in. Now I have to beat this Troll of Khazad-dûm. This is good for 6. And I'm drawing Witherbloom Command, a card that is deeply mid. This Brainstorm can set up Metamorphosis Fanatic. Okay, I wanted to Witherbloom Command to clear the top of my own cards, but I think I'm interested in this. Target player mills 3, and I'm going to drain for 2. Opponent is at 2 life. Milled 2 Metamorphosis Fanatics, pick up Wasteland. Is Wasteland more useful as Wasteland? That lets me play around Daze with stuff. Does that matter? I'm not sure. It could also turn on Fatal Push if, like, Brazen Borrower joins the fray. That was a heads-up Witherbloom Command. I feel good about that. And now Mystic Sanctuary represents lethal by flipping another command. Ponder. I'm going to be honest, I forget what my next card is, which is Unforgivable at Eternal Weekend. I'm in streamer brain right now, but if my top card is a fetch land, that's very good for me. All right, they are on a Wasteland build, which cuts me off green and potentially turns off Mystic Sanctuary. It actually just does both of those things. It's not potential, it's happening. Okay, this is a little greedy, but I think I need the card. Force Will, right. I was pretty sure it was not helpful, and it was not. Murktide, uh-oh. Well, if opponent has Entomb Reanimate, I'm deceased. If they don't, they're deceased. Wasteland. Okay, here we go. I wish I could splice these Fatal Pushes together and kill Troll of Khazad-dûm. Wasteland. Brazen Borrower or bust. Ah, they had it. Tough beats. Okay, what's left in my deck here? Sheoldred's Edict? Oh, not anymore. Yeah, I have no outs. The Wasteland got me. If I didn't Wasteland... Okay. I held that Wasteland for mana for a turn, and then decided it's better to waste now. And I might lose this game because I made that decision. I mean, opponent still has cards in hand, but that is really interesting. That tight little decision is the difference between drawing to a 1-outer and not. But also my opponent wastelanding me twice this game really affected the outcome there. I hope I remember to bring that up in the debrief. Okay. I am definitely dead here. We've seen this plan a couple times now. I'm going to experiment with the 4th Beanstalk and cut the Force of Will, the one Force of Will that I was playing. I just want to try that. I'm not sure if it's right or not, but it makes some sense to me. Tragic No-Lander and a handful of bangers. Mulligan. Okay, I'll keep this one. And bottom Lorien revealed. Yeah, those Wastelands out of my opponent game 1 were enormous. Because not only do I have 2 more mana if he doesn't waste me, but if he just has like 2 other mana producing lands in play, I don't waste him, and I'm up 3 mana that game. But also, I did spend most of that game wastelanding my opponent. Hedge Maze, show me Fairy Macabre. Tameo. I don't actually want that. I don't want my opponent to reanimate it, but I don't want it either. I think Beanstalk is better than Frog. There's just fewer things my opponent can do to mess with this. If it's Entomb Reanimate that he's got, that's going to happen anyway. But at least I'm not just getting Fatal Pushed, and on with life we go. Right, Cycling Troll is a relief over the possible Entomb. I have easy Murderous Cut next turn. Wasteland. Alright, going for that again. Cutting me off green is smart, because I do have a powerful green card in my hand. Alright, cool. Now I can start shoving frogs, and next turn hold up Veil of Summer. Didn't Entomb in the end stat. I'm not worried about Troll in the graveyard. Just passing with land drops. And this is what I was talking about of their deck is not better at this game than mine is. The Orcish Bowmaster is fine. How do I want to do this? I can Veil of Summer, then Murderous Cut. All right, I'm going to fetch for Tropical Island, then Veil of Summer. This triggers Bowmaster, but it can't target me or my things. So you have to ping your own face with this. And then Murderous Cut, the original Bowmaster, and cut you, leaving cards in my graveyard. All right, so you got to ping yourself. You end up with a 2/2 and no Bowmaster. My Frog does not take 1. And if you want to block here, I will discard Underground Sea. I could have also jumped the Frog, but I like my graveyard being available as a resource. I actually overspent on Murderous Cut to protect my graveyard, where I could have put Nile Spellbomb into play here. Kind of regretting that a little bit, I'm going to be honest. We're also in sideboard games of our 3rd match, and the first time Veil of Summer has come up. That's the strength of Bug Beans and the random 1s and 2s of. Not random, but carefully selected, carefully curated 1s and 2s of. Wasteland can take me off a color. Punish that Underground Sea discard. Yep, and the Nile Spellbomb could have stopped that, except it's not in play. Up the Beanstalk, another one of those. Hasn't wastelanded me yet. That's curious. Nile Spellbomb. I'll put that into play. I am going to jump the Frog. And I'm going to leave Murderous Cut in the graveyard as the best thing to buy back. How hard do I want to push here? I could discard Nile Spellbomb. I think I do want to push the extra damage. The opponent's at 9, I'm at 18. I'm in trouble to a Fatal Push. That's a problem I'm going to have to solve. Metamorphosis Fanatic, okay. Playing out Nile Spellbomb right on time. Per the usual. That's why he didn't wasteland me, because he was playing out Daze on the setup Fanatic. Tight player. It bomb you. Can't afford to have Bowmaster in this game. Can't really afford a 4/4 lifelink in the game either. I can attack for 7 this turn. If I draw something that triggers my Beanstalks, that attacks for 6. Now I don't have black mana to help with that endeavor. Best draw is probably something like Murktide Regent or Dismember. I'm going to brainstorm first. If I find the goods, I'd like to use them. Didn't find the goods. In fact, quite bad, honestly. Wastelands clutch once again. I will offer the lifelink if it kills the Metamorphosis Fanatic. He is taking the block, discard Thoughtseize. This makes the race probably unwinnable. Yeah, I guess I just punted that actually, because I know my next 2 cards, and I know they don't help, and I can only see those 2 cards next turn. And Troll gets it done in 2. Yeah, I guess I was supposed to jump Frog, try to find a random card that helps. Cycling another Troll. From main phase sewer. Left it on top. Hate that. Okay, I'm going to connect with Frog first to see the most cards in a straight line this turn. And I basically have to brainstorm into Black Source plus removal for this thing. Brainstorm. If opponent has a Force of Will, yeah, that was super heads up. All right, GG. Let's debrief that one, where Wasteland was MVP in both games.
All right, hello.
Yeah, Wasteland was the story of that entire match. Both games, if you don't Wasteland me, I win. And I think in game one, if I don't Wasteland you on that last turn, I'm also ahead because I drew the Shieldred's Edict. I mean, obviously, maybe you have Counterspell, but I drew the Shieldred's Edict on the last turn where I could, on the turn cycle where I wasted you down to 2 lands myself, then you wasted me down to 1 land myself. And I just put myself to no outs by thinking I could waste you. And then you flipped it back and wasted me. And
yeah,
that was crazy.
Yeah, that game I was talking, that was a super close game, which is rare after an Atraxa triggers.
Right.
Which I think speaks to the grind power of the bug deck, where it's like, I know you've been saying on the podcast a bit, decks that can come back from, we'll say, like a 3-for-1 against Reanimator have a good shot at beating it.
Yep.
Just because they can pull back in, which is what we saw. I think, the Borrower is a 1 of main deck that I got very, very lucky to draw in that situation. So I don't think it was like, good or bad. It just seemed very, very close. And like you said, the decisions mattered, and Wasteland came in big there for sure.
Yep. Yeah, that in the second game as well, where you're able to take me off colors multiple times, that really collapsed my ability to play. And this is consistent with what I've been saying about the construction of Reanimator with Wasteland in it versus not. I think it is a massive edge in the mirror to have real lands instead of Wasteland, but I think it is worse almost everywhere else.
Yeah, it's tough because it's like, without Wasteland, you get to enact your game plan so much more confidently. But as you say, there's times where it can come into play big for sure.
And a deck like this one, like Bug Beans or Esper Stoneblade or even Esper Tempo, now that people are splashing Swords to Plowshares into the Nethergoyf shells, a Wasteland taking someone off a color, like your plan isn't the one you need to enact, really. Like, and this is something we've been chatting about off camera as well, where that Sam Black article where he described game 1 as a draft deck and games 2 and 3 as a sealed deck, where you need to execute on synergy in game 1, and then you just need to have more and better cards in game 2 and 3.
Yeah.
And if you can Wasteland me off a color so I don't have more and better cards because I can't cast my better cards, that's really important in the sideboard games.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe from my end, I've been undervaluing the power of Wasteland just in general versus the metagame. I could see that. We had a very interesting kind of scuffle in that second game where you're attacking with Frog, and then I played the Bowmaster. And I forget the specifics, but it's like, I think you chose not to jump your Frog and let me chump with my Orc Army, which I was very happy to do because it's like a virtual 2 cards, right? Where it's like you discard a card and you draw 1 fewer cards in that combat cycle.
Yep.
I'm really curious what your thought processes were there, because I think there's a lot of ways that combat could have gone.
Yeah, I think if you don't have permanence in play, like I certainly don't want to play against a Bowmaster in that spot, so I'm going to kill it regardless. And my removal spell is going to draw a card, and because of just how the stack works and how the game rules work, Bowmaster is going to trigger off my removal spell on Bowmaster no matter what. So you're going to end up with a minimum 2/2 army no matter what. And once it's a 2/2, it's kind of meaningful damage. And if I don't Veil, it's a 3/3. And it's like, I generally do, because your job in the matchup is to get something going. And like, if you are chipping damage back, you're enacting your game plan, even if it's not exactly an Archon of Cruelty or a Psychic Frog, but a 2/2 or 3/3 matters a lot.
Sure.
And I see the matchup as if nobody's doing anything, I'm winning. And if I can leave you with 0 non-land permanents in play on a turn, I think I'm generally going to favor that outcome. I did
fair.
punt that turn though, because I didn't commit to my line until I was 2/3 of the way through it, where I paid 2 mana into my Murderous Cut instead of just exiling an extra card from the graveyard, because in my head I was like, I want 3 cards in the graveyard so I could jump the frog if I need to. But I had already decided, oh no, I remember what happened. This is actually more complicated, because the Beanstalk trigger on the Murderous Cut drew a land that I was willing to discard, but I actually wanted the other 3 cards in my hand that I had at that point. So my plan was to jump the frog until I drew the extra land, and then I was like, oh, I'll just beat it in combat and leave them without any creatures. But overpaying for the cut to leave 3 cards in my graveyard tapped me out of Nile Spellbomb, which was one of the cards in my hand, and that was the turn you added Troll to the board, which ended up being the thing that I couldn't race.
Gotcha. I see. Yeah, there was a lot of back and forth there for sure. It's interesting because it's like, so you say you value the board, which I actually agree with, but it's like, I guess this is just me as a player. It's like, I just value cards so highly, so I'm just like, oh, this is a 2-for-1. I'm going to take that, you know? But I do agree that like once the Orc Army is a 3/3, it's just a full card at that point, you know? Where it's like 1/1's not a card, 2/2 is like in the middle, and then like 3/3 is just a full card.
And
so it's just
in addition to all that other, like just the basic, what does a Psychic Frog connection mean? I'm also a deck that cares a lot about the graveyard between Delve, Mystic Sanctuary, all of these things I have, and jumping the frog. And if I jump the frog over your 2/2 army that turn, I just have to keep jumping it, or at some point you will eventually be able to jump it and deny me that card anyway. So
yeah,
I can kill this thing now while I'm under Veil Protection, and I know it's going to work, and like I have all these boxes checked, and it hasn't done any damage to me yet. Or I can make it a later problem where maybe you just untap and Fatal Push my frog and you get to keep your 2/2, and I end up taking 8 from it. So
that's fair.
I think in that spot, obviously there's spots like if I'm hellbent, I'll just try to get another card somehow. But I had a bunch of cards in my head. I just don't think I used them all correctly.
Yeah, it's really tough because it's like, as you say, you're working with unknown information. Like, what would I draw off the Veil? What would I draw off the Psychic Frog hit? And I think I'm not trying to be results oriented here, but it's like you ended up discarding the Underground Sea, which again, like I happen to have 2 of my 3 Wastelands in my opener, so it's just like I don't think that was a mistake to do. But it's like sometimes cards you don't think matter end up mattering later. But then again, it's like 2/2 versus 3/3 versus having a board. You maybe could have even tried to get tricky and like, let's say you jump the frog and then you draw a card and then you respond to the draw, or after you draw the card, you respond to the Bowmaster ping with a Murderous Cut. And after the second Bowmaster ping, then you Veil, and then both the pings fizzle, you know? And then the Orc Army is still like a 1/1, you know? But again, you're dealing with unknown information of just like, well, now I don't know if the Murderous Cut resolves. I don't know if the Veil resolves, yada, yada. So,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. We can talk about this turn for a long time, I'm sure. And I know you've talked about loving coaching sessions where stuff like that happens, but yeah, this was very complicated.
Yeah, that was a really good combat. I could see a lot of reasonable ways to do it. I think my final answer is I would have done everything that I did, except I would have committed to just discarding a card to win the combat without knowing what I was going to draw off cut. So I could park the Nile Spellbomb in play and not let you get a big recovery turn out of the exchange, because I did everything I was supposed to do that turn. I was happy with the outcome until I was facing out a troll on the very next turn. And that troll did do basically all 18 damage that game. That was done.
Yes. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I think I agree. The logic seems very good.
Cool. I was trying in this last round. I brought in the fourth Beanstalk. I wasn't doing that in our first two sets.
Mm-hmm.
Have you mapped this out with the new changes
I
that we made this
have
morning?
it's I have because I think previously to the changes I was cutting a Beanstalk, and I wasn't bringing in a Witherbloom command. So I think after that I'm just cutting the Witherbloom command instead, just because I think now that Tameo is just not a part of the lists anymore, it really only hits Animate Dead and I guess a Bowmaster after sideboard. But it's like this one Bowmaster, and some lists play two. That's about it. Some lists play zero.
It can also
So
threaten lethal when your opponent's at 2 and you just milled over
it can,
2.
yes. I got a little nervous.
Yeah,
After the
that was
first
a close one.
that was, yeah.
Yeah, I was so what I was bringing in a 7-card package with Beanstalk as the 8th card.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing Veil, Island, Bowmaster, Carpet, Dismember, Macabre Cage. And
Okay,
I was side grading Island into Wasteland and just making that change because I don't think wasting you is generally my plan.
I agree.
And I was cutting all the Force of Wills, Consign to Memory, and both Witherbloom commands.
Mm-hmm.
When I
This all
wasn't
makes sense.
when I
Oh,
wasn't
sorry.
bringing in that was 8 cards I just said. When I wasn't bringing in the fourth Beanstalk, I kind of was between leaving in one command or one force. But then when we added Macabre, I don't want even one force anymore.
Sure. Um, yeah. Let me see. So I think one big thing that I am doing differently is I'm leaving in 3 Force of Wills for the matchup.
Okay.
Um, I think there are just bottlenecks that like we saw in like we saw in a lot of the game ones where it's like there's a bottleneck that if you get out of it, the game just collapses from the blue black side. Like there's
Right.
not like, oh no, I 2-for-1 to myself, but your blue black opponent just has so many bad draws by turn 5, turn 6, turn 7 that just don't do anything. Um, Sometimes those are even like fatal push and go for the throat that like don't have a target yet, but you still need it in your deck. So especially with beanstalks in the deck, I've been a big fan of keeping in 3-ish Force of Will still.
Okay. So what's
Um,
your map? Because that's 3 cards that you are cutting that I'm not. That's a big
yeah.
change.
So let me see here. So basically, really quick. So we went down to 2 days, and then 1 consign, and then we added a macabre. Like we brought a consign in and added a macabre to the sideboard. So I guess I'm bringing in Bowmaster, Carpet, Veil, Cage, Macabre. These all make sense. And then I'm cutting 2 commands, 1 force, and 2 wastelands. And I'm not bringing in the island, which maybe is folly, but I feel like I just don't want to flood too hard. And the island isn't like the island is not the thing that I'm worried about getting wastelanded, right? It's like if I'm trying to keep all my how do I put this? If I am worried about losing my green or black mana to wasteland, because those are the important ones, right? The
Right.
island doesn't really help with that. So island is more for like blood moon decks and back to basics decks in my eyes, or maybe like lands where it's just like you just want as many mana sources as you can play against a deck like lands.
Okay. So you're cutting 2 command, 1 force, and you said 2 wasteland.
Yeah,
All right. So that's 6 cards. And you weren't
that's not
bringing in
good.
the island or the dismember is the
Not
difference.
good.
What was that?
Oh yes, one difference we
Oh,
have in
that's
our
5
list
cards.
is that I don't have the Strix in my list, and I have Dismember in that slot, and it's
Oh,
not in
okay.
it.
Gotcha.
Um, so I guess that frees up one more thing. At that point, it's like personal preference. I do think both cards are good. You don't necessarily need one. You could cut like another Force of Will, play 2 Force, or um, something of that nature if you want. Or you could not bring in the Bowmaster, um, at that point if you think Strix is better.
Okay.
Uh,
And
really
so
small things.
if that's what you're doing with the wastelands, is cutting the third wasteland for island then check a box, because like obviously if they're going to waste you off a color, Island doesn't help, as you said, but you can ponder and brainstorm your way back into colored mana where Wasteland doesn't help. And what are we doing with one Wasteland? We're just hoping to cheese, or like
It might be
is
right,
there
yeah.
a real reason for that?
I think it's just I drew it once and it won me a game. Like this is not scientific at all. I think it's just like, sometimes it won me a game, or sometimes it stopped my opponent from double spelling as easily. Where I'm not sure how much the extra island would have helped there. I'm sure there's also maybe been games where it's like you draw that one Wasteland, and you drew Wasteland plus Underground Sea, and then your sea got hit, and then you're in trouble. So that might just be better. It's not something I thought about like super super deeply.
Okay. Yeah, I'm hyper aggro just in basically all decks at all times with cutting Force of Will if I can. That's just something I want to do because I don't like spending 2 cards on 1 card. But
I agree.
Obviously, Up the Beanstalk changes the math on Force of Will, and what you were saying about the bottleneck makes sense. Like are you completely off Force versus Dimir Tempo without Reanimator, or do you still leave like 1 or 2 in?
I leave in 2 against Dimir Tempo. Like I basically never cut more than 2 forces in my deck, where it's like I probably have 3 to 4 Beanstalks in the list.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
All right. Yeah.
Like you do need things to trigger your Beanstalks, otherwise it's just not a good card.
Right. And without any forces in the deck, it becomes 2 Murderous Cut, 3 Murktide, 2 Lorien Revealed that can trigger the Beanstalk. Yeah. That makes some sense to leave a couple in.
Mm-hmm. And it gets better too, where it's like a lot of times the tempo players or the scam players are leaving in their forces, and like when an opponent leaves in Force of Wills, yours become better because they're 2 for 2s less or more often. So that also plays into my calculus. I think in our games, I was from the scam side, I was leaving in 3 to 4 Force of Wills. Partially because I don't have enough things to bring in, but also partially just because, again, I want to push through the bottleneck and get my thing into play.
Okay. Yeah, I'll experiment with leaving in more forces than I was. I had 1 most of the games. I think I'm more likely to leave in 1 or 2 than 2 or 3.
Yeah, that's fine.
It could just like my personal preference and how I want games to play out.
Yeah, there's a lot of personal preference with with this bug deck for sure. I definitely, when people ask me about it, I try to say like, as long as you have a reason, that's way more important for most things. Some things I'm like, okay, you need to play Murderous Cut in the deck, or something like that.
Right.
But like, I'm like strongly like, okay, 4 frogs is too many. It doesn't really do what the deck needs a lot of the time. It's like a card you play after you've locked up the game, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like some things where it's like I have strong reasons, I'll express them, but for a lot of things it is just personal preference and how you view the meta and flexibility. So I think the number of forces you're leaving in is also in that bucket for me.
Okay, yeah, and I would say the 1 Strix, the 1 Bowmaster, the 1 Thoughtseize, the 1 Consign are all comfortable flex slots that could be played with. I like all those slots personally, but they could be played with. 2 feels like the right number of Tameo.
Yeah, I agree. It falls off hard because just like it's legendary.
Right.
Quick thing. The Consign looked much better than a Daze would have in all of our game ones. So I liked that change quite a lot.
Yes, I liked the Consign most of the time that it showed up. There was 1 game, the one where I wasted you twice, and I had Consign in my hand, and I was like, if this was Stifle, the game would be over. However, Stifle doesn't solve the Eldrazi deck, which is why we're maining a Consign in the first place. So I think Consign is right, but I did miss Stifle for like 1 second.
Yeah, it's also much worse for like Vexing Bauble and the One Ring.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. This is the correct one. I just wanted to show a rare moment of love for Stifle, a card that I generally think sucks ass.
Yeah. I agree. All right, I think that's about everything. This was a lot of good conversation, both on gameplay and deck construction. I'm really happy we did these debriefs.
Yeah, I think this Fairy Macabre change is huge, and I'm basically going to lock that, and then just playing with the plans and figuring out how often I'm actually bringing in Beanstalk. Like, does the fourth one even belong in the board, or is 3 just a good number for the deck? And I mean, that's like a long-term mapping assignment. We're not going to figure that out here on this call, but yeah, Consign felt great. Macabre felt right. And the games were close and came down to decisions most of the time, which is how I want to play Magic.
Yeah. The play patterns are immaculate. I cannot disagree with that. And I do think it's pretty well positioned right now. So I thought we got a lot of this. I'm really happy we did this.
Cool. Yeah, there's a good chance that I have just locked Bug Beans. I was like 70% on Bug Beans before this session. Now I'm like 95%.
Yeah, this made it better for me too. Like it felt like it had the tools to deal with even like the new powered up Fnatic version of this build.
Yeah, so. Yeah. Good stuff, inspiring stuff. I'm excited to potentially play the exact same 2 decks at Eternal Weekend this year that I played last year, which is just its own kind of vibe.
Yeah. Yeah, the meta came full circle. At least in Legacy. I don't know what you vintage gamers are doing so much. Although I have enjoyed your vintage content. So yeah, that's cool.
All right, sweet. Well, thanks for the set. Thanks for the chats. This was a huge, important couple hours spent in the week before Eternal Weekend for me. And, you know where to find me if you want to message me over the coming week. I'm sure we will.
Yeah, awesome. Same here. All right. I think that about does it for me. Good to call it.
All right. See ya.
Yeah, take care. Bye.
And that was my testing set versus Pokemoki. This content was probably a lot drier than what I normally offer, but for the people who really want to understand what high-level testing looks like, or like getting super sweaty about the details, this was... I'm really glad we decided to record this. I wasn't sure if I was going to. I believe Pokemoki was recording it as well. If you want to go check out his YouTube for his side of the matches, the conversation is going to be the same, obviously. But just putting in a couple hours thinking about one specific matchup, we almost immediately innovated this Fairy Macabre that is a lock to be in the deck for me. And then talking about Force of Will in context of a Beanstalk deck versus in context of a non-Beanstalk deck that might also play Force of Will versus a combo deck versus a non-combo deck in Dimir Reanimator versus Dimir Tempo. All of that stuff, these little details, just having 0 versus 1 versus 2 versus 3 forces in your deck post-board matters a lot for something like Eternal Weekend. And do this now. Like, I made some mistakes. I made some sequencing errors that I was able to identify, and you want to make those mistakes and learn from them in this environment, not in round 3 of Eternal Weekend where it matters a lot. You want to have already figured out what you're supposed to do and what boxes you're supposed to check. This was a lot of fun. Pokemoki, thank you for participating. Everybody, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Check out the Patreon. Check out 3 for 1 Trading's Black Friday sale. And I'll see you next time.